Stephanie Dossman from Natixis CIB Research. I'm a specialist on real estate sector. And let me introduce you Ran Velayos, who is the founder of GV20, and a real estate investment and consulting company in Spain. So today we will host this roundtable on real estate. What we can say is that the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the pressing challenge of climate change, but it has also disrupted our way of living, the way we work, the way we shop as well. So we will discuss how tech... Oh no, can I take it? Thank you. We will discuss with this roundtable on how can deep tech, help meet new expectations across the real estate sector. If you want to go on.
Well, just afterwards we'll have the roundtable. No? Here you have our speakers today, and you will have Vincent Bryan, co-founder and chairman of DEPKI. My French, English, sorry if the name because now Gregory is the word, or how do you pronounce that? Founder of PropTech, and Pere Viñolas, this I can say in the right manner because it's Catalan, but chairman and CEO of Inmobiliaria Colonial. No? So they will, afterwards we will have the roundtable with them.
So let me start with a short introduction. So at Natixis CIB Research, we recently published a report on how tech can help meet the low carbon building targets. And let me remind you some figures you may know, but buildings are responsible for 36% of greenhouse gas emissions in the European Union, of which 26% relate to the building construction and 45% come from the building, residential building, direct or indirect emissions. The European Union estimates that 75% of its current building stock is energy inefficient, and the European Climate Law in June 2021 has reiterated the target of net zero gas emission by 2050. With the first step in 2030 by reducing emissions by 55%. So when you know that half of the building in developing and in emerging countries in 2050 are yet to be built, you can easily see why the low carbon building are key, and why tech can help meet these goals. So real estate companies have already addressed these climate change issues for years now, and they have achieved quite good results so far, as you can see on this slide. And their target of carbon neutrality is usually 2050, but some of them are betting on 2030, which is pretty challenging. And again, here, tech can probably help a lot. And on this slide, I wanted to highlight the findings of the survey Natixis and BCG ran in the last few months on how tech can impact the real estate sector. And the conclusion is that there are 4 disruptive technologies that stand out and could be used, in our view, to help meet, again, these climate change targets. They are energy efficient target for buildings. So the first one, which is not new, of course, it's tech widespread. Artificial intelligence and big data for a better analysis of the energy consumption in building, for instance. And come after that 3 deep techs, so augmented reality or virtual reality for, as you can see, virtual visit that could reduce the gas emission by travel. Then come the blockchain and asset tokenization, for instance, better traceability in building materials recycling. And finally, 3D printing to build sustainable properties. Thank you.
And now, I would like to just some food for thought for the round table. No, I mean, this is about the PropTech world, or what's going on with the venture and the funding in this asset class. And the first question that I have, and probably we can discuss, is why this is the biggest asset class in volume, 280 trillion. But when you see, it is not correlated when you go to the investment in the venture, in funding, in PropTech. It's in the middle. It's in the middle of nowhere. 9 times less investment than in fintech. Why? There is a specific reason for that or not? It's an opportunity, or maybe is that for whatever reason this is not the sector for disruption. So this is the first question. The second is that it's true that it's not in the top, but in the last decade it's increasing and increasing. The value can be in this 84 billion that we have seen. Probably Greg can discuss these numbers or improve them. But it seems that COVID has been a stopper in the funding. It's intuitive or counterintuitive, because everyone is saying that COVID has been an accelerator for technology. The number is wrong, the number is not wrong. People have seen that these investments are risky and has decided to stop them. It's just COVID, and they will come back. The third thing is the players. The number of players, when you begin to see that, it's still tiny. Still, there are not that much players. We begin to see, we were just discussing now, we begin to have big hitters. We have here, AO, it's one of them for sure, that it's seated here. But you see the spectrum anywhere else, and you see that in Europe, still short. Why? Volume, Europe does not have the scale that these businesses need to be unicorns, or it's simply that we are some years behind the US and that. Because the truth is that there are less unicorns here that you can see in the US or in China. Any reason for that? And you see also, when you hear Spain, it's UK and France are probably the ones with more the ecosystem. I was reading this morning in my country that has grown the number of PropTechs 8%. At least it's not that wow. So what's going on? So probably here we can discuss. The other thing is what we have been speaking. It's this is about technology disruption with technology, but every technology, we don't know the technologies that are going to be the winners. This is about IA, or what this is about. So apparently IA is the one that more startups are there. And the other thing is try to understand what's going on for these startups, for these PropTechs. To begin, it seems that ventures needs to be here and needs to institutionalize, because at the very early stages, in pre-seeds, apparently they are not, or there are very little. It's business angels and own resources, and they come in, but when you go just to the seed, or you go into the growth, you see that the presence of the venture capital is everyone higher. And if you see in Europe, the Nordics, or the Eastern Europe, are apparently much more institutionalized, that it happens even in Central Europe, and Paul, sorry, Pera, but in the South Europe, we are behind. And the last is, it's about every asset class. Disruption is going to happen everywhere. Seems that the startups are going to resident and to offices. Looks quite intuitive, because are the biggest asset classes, the more institutionalized, so the people goes where that. But does it make sense in the more, I would say, big elephants, guys, big companies, or might make sense in other asset classes less, that allow more disruption? It's other of the things that we can speak with Pera and with Vincent. And I would say that's it. I think that's some food for thought.
start the roundtable now. Maybe to start with Gregory, a simple one, if I may. Where do you see tech will have the most impact?
Hi, I just want to react just to a couple of the slides. I think it's just a matter of Europe has been, in general, is behind the US in terms of just risk appetite and vision of everything related to technology. Certainly, there's no fundamental reason why it should be smaller. The real estate market is as big as in the US. We have amazing entrepreneur, educational system, great government frameworks, and interesting regulatory frameworks coming from the governments around ESG and climate, which are creating companies that simply don't exist in the US. We're proud that we are the largest venture fund in Europe with 250 million, and we hope that by next year we won't be the biggest one anymore, which mean that there is more and more ambition in our ecosystem. To answer your question, I think it's important to just take a step back and understand what we mean about what is the real estate, what's the ecosystem we look at. For us, real estate is really the entire life cycle from the supply chain of raw materials to design, architecture, construction, building operation, tenant engagement, and the transaction side. And so every step of the way is an opportunity to create value in 3 different ways. The first one is how do you actually potentially reduce operating costs for the owner of the building or the property manager. And so it's about enabling the expansion of the margin through reducing energy costs, energy consumption, energy wastage. And there's a number of solutions that are pretty amazing that are coming to the market today. You could have new AI-driven building management systems that are replacing facility managers that enable you to reduce your energy consumption by 20-30% or more. That's one example. Then you have everything related to the top line. How do you increase your revenue as a landlord in a world where rental growth of just purely the rent is questioned, especially when it comes to certain asset class? After COVID, everything has been turned on its head. We don't know how some assets are going to perform. How do I, as a landlord, leverage this unique position where I'm at the center of that privileged relationship with my tenants, whether they are office tenants or residential tenants, and how do I actually create an opportunity for more revenues, ancillary revenues? We live in a world where the likes of Amazon are trying to get into your homes. You see, they launched a robot yesterday. They have Alexa. They're trying to grip that relationship and that trust from the tenant to create other revenue opportunities. But if you think about it, who has inherently the trust of the tenant? It's the landlord. You're paying your rent to the landlord. It's your biggest single expenditure. So if you trust them for a few €1,000, you should trust them for a few hundred for ancillary transactions. So that's the other thing we think about. How do you maximize and optimize for top line? In a world where assets trade at 2-3% cap rate, every euro of value created to your income is 30-40 euros of potentially asset value. And the last thing is climate change, decarbonization. It's something that is a must-have. 2-3 years ago, people were still laughing at us when we were talking about this. Actually, they had no idea even what we were talking about. But effectively, today you have the convergence of regulators, customers, i.e. tenants, and capital markets, which are going to increasingly ask questions about what you're doing as a landlord to integrate technology to reduce carbon emission and to create efficiencies. The good news is today we have technologies not only enable you to reduce your carbon footprint, but at the same time they enable you to reduce your cost. So there's an alignment where climate change means cost reduction. Until, again, a few years ago, it meant, oh, I need to spend more money for some ESG stuff that I don't even know what it does to me, to my company. Today, it's a lot clearer. You can measure it. And if you don't embrace it, you will have tremendous penalty from regulators. You get penalized by your investors. And I think it's very important to think about the cost of not doing some things as a way to think about value creation. If you don't do something, not only you don't create value, but you will have value destruction. So doing something is about creating and not destructing. So I think it's a very important way to think about value creation in what we do.
And precisely, Pere, as a landlord, how does it impact your strategy?
Hello. Look, I would say that the beauty And the problem at the same time that we face is that this is impacting everywhere, no? Because as Gregory said, we could revisit the way we build our assets, the way we establish our relationship with our clients, or even what the marketplaces are for us in the future, no? So the problem is, how do you manage this complexity, no? And how do you do it? By the way, on top of that, is not only looking at the pure real estate, but when you add the ESG or the climate change component, then you have the problems and opportunities twice, no? So as I said, the problem is, how do you manage that, no? I think that you have to go through several questions and answers, no? I think that first of all, you have to distinguish what is really your value chain and what is not, or where PropTech do you think that is going to be impacting quicker your clients or your suppliers than yourself, no? So you have to put your bet in the right place because you have limited resources, no? And I think that the second question that you have to put to yourself is, how do you manage uncertainty? So when you see all of these problems and opportunities, the question is where you put your efforts, no? And I think that at the beginning is a lot about assessing the certainty of each opportunity that is there, the certainty applied to your company. How much do you feel that your value chain is going to be impacted? And then to put your resources in that place more than another one, no? The third one is simply how to land all of these things, no? We'll discuss later about data, many things that related to data or ESG strategies. The main problem is how you start and how you land this, no? Because the aim is quite obvious, no? But how to make things feasible, that's a big question.
Vincent, let's go with data, no? This is about data. It's data central of everything. It's just a combination of matters, but we speak a lot about data, no? And I want to combine two questions in one. It's and with your views, no, of coming of a new kid on the block with very strong startups are going to disrupt dramatically this sector. So do you see in 5 years, 10 years from now, no, that Pere is going to be competing with animals that he could not even imagine, or it's going to be something different than that?
Yeah, perhaps. Good question. First, I'd like to say that I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And indeed, Pere and Gregory told it. Actually, there is a climate change. And it's no longer an assumption, a maybe assumption. We all need to take our responsibility about climate change. And the real estate industry stands for 36% of the CO2 emission. Because the way we build building and the way we manage building has an impact on the CO2 emission. And it speeded up lately, the past years, the awareness about the importance of climate change within this industry. Why? Obviously because of the regulatory pressure, Décret tertiaire in France, up and coming Ley por el Cambio Climático in Spain, MES in the UK and so on, but also at the European level with EU taxonomy, SFDR, and actually the US are catching up very quickly with the up and coming SEC regulation. But also because investors understood that it is key, because otherwise it will be value destruction. Not only not creation, but value destruction, as Gregory said. And actually, I like quoting BlackRock CEO Larry Fink saying that actually CEOs managing companies which don't take into account CO2 emission and a net zero pathway by 2050 will lose at some point value. And how do you know if you are going to lose value? In the real estate industry, we used to think that in the past that actually there were a green value. If you have a nice asset, you put the label on it, certified BREEAM, BREEAMINEOS, outstanding, blah, 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 and you get value on it. Actually, no. Now the market value is performing asset, ESG performing asset. And if you don't have ESG performing asset, you will lose value. That's what universities called brown discounting. And we gathered the past years at DeepKey 20 or 30 different academic studies about that. And it's interesting to see, especially the last one from Oxford University, that actually the value destruction of the asset class varies between -2 to -20% of the value of the asset. When you look at energy, it's only 5 to 20 euros per square meter. A lease contract, what is it? 300 to 1,000 euro per square meter here in Paris. But the value of the asset, it's 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 euro per square meter. If you lose 10%, not only 10% of your value, because you don't have an outstanding ESG performing asset, what is at stake for you, for your company, for your investors, for your customers, for the attractivity of the asset? And the hardest part is to figure out actually which asset is at risk and which asset is not. To do so, you need to collect data. And it's not that easy actually, because everybody is talking about IoT and a lot of stuff, and there are many technologies, and we do value IoT as well at DeepKey. It's just that, how do you start to get comprehensive overview of your portfolio? Because the data belongs to who use it, to who create it. And when you are a real estate owners, you can ask people like us to collect the data, but how do you do for your tenants? Because you don't have any right to get access to the data. So you first need to get the consent. And it's funny to see that actually the data is at stake. It's a key cornerstone of all climate change strategy for the real estate industry, not only, but especially for real estate industry. And actually it's both a high-tech issue, being able to collect this data, to assess the asset, to figure out what will be the pathway by 2050, but also it's a low-tech issue. How do you get the consent from your tenants? Mrs. or Miss Jones in the building, your residential asset, or this big brand in a commercial center, or logistic operator in a logistic asset. You need to get their consent to get access to the data. And it's funny to see that within Europe, the way you ask the permission to people is very different. You don't ask permission from an Italian tenant or Spanish tenant the same way you ask it from a German tenant. Not at all, actually. and I like to see that actually it's not only a technological issue, it is, definitely, but also a change management issue.
Just the question, do you see some animal that you are not thinking about it today, coming to disrupt your, and you see any of your companies that you are investing competing with Pera, because this is real estate, This is...
Yeah, I do. Following what was being said, only if you remain at the ESG, in the ESG world, there's a lot coming. For example, here we are only talking now about the physical characteristics of a building, what we would call scope 1 or scope 2, when we talk about, but what it's coming, it's scope 3, and this is beyond your walls. It's much more than this. It's the full carbon footprint of you, the people that are inside your building, and not only when they are inside the building, but outside the building. So all of this reality, which is so complex that certainly needs an answer that it's not provided by the current players, by us or by the established community, so only if you think at this level, you see that there will be answers that will be provided by animals that do not exist today. That's clear for me.
I think definitely we are at a turning point today where I think as a large real estate company, you have two choices. You can decide that you're going to keep on doing things the way you've been doing for the last decades, and it's been working very well. You've made a lot of money and everyone's been happy. Or you realize that there is a real change and you take responsibility and you allocate the right resources to that. And the problem we've seen in a lot of those companies is the culture of we don't have the right to fail because everything has to be precise, exact. When you build a building, you have zero margin for error. When you're dealing with technology, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to iterate. There's this notion of what we call failing forward as opposed to not failing at all. And so there's different things that need to happen. Culture needs to change. You need to bring new types of talent within our organization. Data scientists, engineers, people are going to enable you to transition to what the next world is. One of the issues we've had is, I remember, I'll never forget, maybe 3 years ago, I was at a dinner in London with maybe the top 10, some of the CEOs of large real estate groups in the UK, and I was trying to talk about technology, and everyone was kind of laughing at me saying, yeah, it's not happening, or it's the next guy's problem. The guy was telling me, I'm 5 years from retiring, why am I going to start spending and eating from my bottom line when I'm not going to see the benefit of it because it's going to take years to unfold. So let it be somebody else's problem. So I think it comes down to the biggest enemy of the large incumbents today are themselves and how they embrace this change. And we're seeing in the last 2 years a complete change, and really people are, the good organizations are embracing change. They understand their pitfall. They understand that they don't know what they don't know, and they need to learn, and they need to spend the money not only in integrating technology. It's a pain. Everyone hates it. Your employees will hate it, will hate you. They'll say, why do we have to change what we've been doing? And God forbid you have to do another change 6 months later because it was the wrong system. I mean, people will resign, will break stuff, especially in this country. But the point is, you have to do what you have to do, and you have to have an alignment from top to bottom in the firm and explain to your people why change is required and why it's necessary. And if you don't embrace it, you will be no longer relevant, not in 10 years or in 20 years, in 5 years. And that's how we think about it.
Thank you. And on the Occupy market, I would say, how can tech help optimize the office spaces when we see the change of in our way of working with more working from home habits, etc.? How do you see tech optimizing a building, etc.?
Yes, as I said, technology can bring solutions at the marketplace level, at the relationship with your customer level, or at the construction level, no? The way you do things. No? If we talk about customers, I think that the new relationship that everybody is expecting from us is you are expected to have a strategy which is customer-centric, which, by the way, it's not easy because, as it was being said a few minutes ago, it's not obvious that the landlord has the relationship with the final customer. You have somebody in between, which is in fact your real customer, no? Which is the tenant. No? So how can you develop strategies that will be appreciated by the final end user and at the same time are accepted by the tenant? That's a little bit the tricky game, no? That you have in front of you. No? But basically, it's about going from let's say a real estate driven strategy that you're mainly providing walls, no, and a room, to a situation where you deliver an experience, no, to your client, no, and again, this is not only related to what you do inside the building. As of today, the reason number one why people like a particular building is how much time do they need to get there, no? So anything that has to do with mobility is number one, no? Number two, it's not even what you have inside the building, it's what you have surrounding your building, what kind of experience, a lively experience are you providing. In our research and statistics with our clients, this comes number two. And of course, number three, when you are inside, it's about flexibility and, again, getting the right experience. So how you pack all of these things in a way, you know, that it's practical for the end user, which is, as I said, it's not only your client, but the person that is inside your client, that in the end is the key of your strategy. No?
Gregory, what's your take on that?
I mean, he's absolutely right. One of the challenges of real estate is that there's so many layers, so many stakeholders, and you don't really know who your customer is, whether, you know, there's the tenant, the property manager, the asset manager, the owner. So it's very complicated. I would say that one of the biggest shifts, and exactly the word that's been used now, one of the biggest shifts in the industry in the last few years was we went from landlord-centric, i.e. here is your lease, let's talk in 9 years and 6 months, whether you renew or not, and we don't have to interact. I'm the landlord, here's your 4 walls, deal with it. To customer centricity, which is, I'm the customer, I need flexibility, I need tailor-made solution, I need agility, I need technology, I need to know that the provider of the space where I'm spending time is enabling me to reach my net zero goals. There's a whole sorts of things that are coming into the equation. And so it's very interesting to see, you know, we see today, if you read the news, everyone's calling for the death of the office, for example. The office is dead, right? Everyone loves to say that and to be very sensational. We actually think that, you know, it's the people who call for that are probably the ones who are the most misinformed, because actually, if you start running a bit surveys, you understand that there's a willingness to spend time in the office. yes, we acknowledge that there are some issues that have been exposed. Commuting is the enemy of the office. So you need to make your presence in the office worthy enough the commute. And so we think that instead of calling for everyone's going to work from home happily ever after, I think if you have kids, you will know that it's, if you have young kids at home, you know that it's not possible.
I know.
I have 18 months at home and, you know, it's definitely a trick. But we believe it's going to be a balance of, yes, you'll have the HQ and people will work X number of days per week, 3 days, 4 days, 2 days. The jury's still out there. And then the combination of that and something that we prefer to call work closer to home as opposed to work from home. And so how do you enable your employees to have also a solution where they can have no commute, maybe local hubs, they give them a membership, etc., where they can actually spend 1 or 2 days a week where they have an infrastructure. And where we see the biggest change that enables all of this is corporates. We're going to have to incorporate a software layer to do dynamic workforce management. How do you manage all this employee base from a time, i.e. which day of the week they come? Because obviously if you ask people to choose, everyone will want to work from home Monday and Friday, and then the office is empty. How do you manage the time and the space? So how do you allocate people within your defined space? Which team collaborate together? How to optimize this space? So we think that things are going to happen, and office is an instrumental part of our daily life, and it's just a matter of how do we enable office to basically accommodate the new needs of their customers and the tenants. So that's how we think about it.
Let's discuss about green. Now it's everything. It's about green. No, what's real? What's not real? The greenwashing concept that it's around there. No, how technology, no, and we have been discussing a lot, no, interacting with human beings, understanding what they understand. No, what role is technology going to take in the real transition of what I call fake green to real green? No, to have my certificate to be real green oriented company. No.
I think the word of the 50 shades of green has started. And we all need now to figure out actually what will be the right shade. It's not easy. You know, if you come back in the past a little bit, let's step back. In 2000, talking about green in the real estate industry, it was just saying 2 words, 2 lines in the annual report, saying, yeah, I put some, I don't know, bees on my roof, and I put LEDs in my office and so on. And starting in 2003, 2004, we see raised some certifications, labels such as BREEAM, LEED, HQE, Passive House, etc. It was the beginning, but most of them were focusing on construction at the beginning. And actually, and unfortunately, construction stands for only for 1% of the renew of the park. Actually, the building stock of next year is already 99% existing. And if we look at 2050, it will be 80%. So 80% of the building stock in 2050 is already here. So actually, even if you don't do anything on the new buildings, you don't tackle the climate change issue, because most of the issue is about existing building stock. And so the labels became a little bit more about managing the building, revenues, LEED EPROM, HQE exploitation, and so on. And in 2010, it was more observatories, you know, GRIESB raised at this date, Observatoire Immobilier Durable in France, or BBP in the UK, and so on. And then something changed in the late years, in the past years. It is the emerging of what we call pathways, trajectories, which is very powerful. Why? Because you cannot say anymore that actually you will only reduce your consumption by 50%, not saying exactly when will you start to measure and when will you finish measuring it. Now, and we see with Immobilier Rea Colonial and Clépierre and Unibail, actually now it's very practical objectives. I need to reduce my impact by 2050 and I need to be net zero. There is no discussion. Net zero. Yes, but I have a data center. I don't care. It will be net zero by 2050. I mean, it's huge. It's an absolute value. And this methodology of trajectory is very powerful because it gives a real North Star for everybody. And you mentioned what is green, what is not green. Actually, for climate change topics, which is today the biggest priority, it will be net zero. That's it. But we still need to think about everything else. You know, there are other ESG components. And I like the EU taxonomy philosophy, which says actually climate change is clearly the priority, but we need to try to do not significant harm on other stuff. So air quality, indoor air quality, sanitary measures, and water, waste, recycling, and so on. All these things are important as well, and you need to follow them up. It's just that you need to make a priority. And data, talking about that, is indeed key, because you need to measure. There is this famous proverb from the Netherlands, I cannot tell in Dutch, sorry, but it says, measuring is knowing, knowing is acting, acting is reducing. Let's start.
I think this is very interesting, and it's all about the certification, and everybody, all investors are looking for BREEAM, LEED assets to buy, or added value buildings to renovate, to restructure, to increase the value of an asset. So, Perret, maybe, how do you assess the impact of tech on the valuation of an asset? Do you think only obsolete assets will go to zero, or how do you measure that, the impact of tech? And yeah,
I think that we are going through these thoughts now as we speak now in the market. A few years ago, there was no thoughts on this, no. So it was a non-financial issue or a topic that had no impact in valuation. Then we went to what was said by Vincent, which is the brown trap story. So now it's more you lose if you don't do it, or you are not investable. So you want to be in the game, at least you have to have this level. That's more or less where we would be right now. So now some people are rushing, no, because if not, they're going to be in the brown trap, no. In our case, I think we were not visionaries. Our bet in Colonial was for the high-end, high-quality and real estate buildings because of other reasons, no? Because of risk-adjusted return, because of the user experience, no. But now we see that it also works regarding ESG, no. And just right now as we speak, I think these people are starting to guess the answer to your question, no. Is there incremental value if you do, let's say, state-of-the-art ESG strategies? And we're starting to see some things. No? On the equity side, let's talk in a financial way, it's still too difficult to assess, no, the number. But for example, on the debt side, you can see now that if you issue green debt, no, or you transform your debt into a green one, and it's not greenwashing, by the way. It's something that can be audited and tested, no, and it's reliable. You are starting to see 10 basis points, 20 basis points on your cost of your debt. You start to compound some numbers, do some guessing on the equity side, and then guessing how much your weighted average cost of capital goes down, and therefore how much the euros per square meter you're getting in addition. No, I think that as of now, maybe you could say 5–10% of additional value of your asset with the kind of hints that we have, which is a lot, which is incredible, which pays off most of what you should do. No, so we are just now going from this brown trap to the valuation topic, and I think that we will have a much clearer view in a few years, basically when capital markets are more developed in terms of green instruments that can be compared to non-green instruments. No, then we'll have a more precise answer.
Because probably in some years from now, basically, it will not be possible to be invested in some asset that is not green, whatever green means in 5 years from now. No, but Greg, one point. I mean, what you were mentioning, no, some years ago you go to London and everyone is saying, "Come on, what are you talking about?" No, today my sentiment is that top guys, CEOs, it's not an option. I mean, it's not an option. You can be believer or you cannot be believer, no? But you cannot go to a and say, no, this, I don't mind anything about this. No, it's not an option. That's my sentiment, no? And my question is, but this is risky. I mean, what concerns about all this, no, that can come, this wave of technology, you know, this wave of we need to innovate, I need to do things because if not, I will be, no? What really concerns you about all this? No, it's many things. No, the cybersecurity, confidentiality, data protection, many things. No, but what really concerns you on this topic? On what you are seeing that clients are concerning you, and you have more pushback from the industry?
Yeah, look, I definitely, we now, I think when we first launched the fund, we thought that the only way to engage with large landlords was for them to be investors of ours, otherwise they would just not pick up the phone. Today, we speak to everyone, all the largest company, they want to engage, they want to understand what to do. Of course, it does sound risky, but why does it sound risky? Because we went from doing nothing to having to do everything, and obviously there's a growing pain. There are inherent risks to anything. I like to always make this analogy. You can drive your car and have a car crash, but you learn how to drive, and you have security measures, airbags, etc., and you make it work. Similar with technology. As I said, I think there needs to be a shift in culture. There needs to be a message within the firm that different types of talent need to complement the existing talent. What we used to see even up to a few years ago is, let's start a innovation department in the firm, and they would pick the head of accounting and putting my head of innovation in the firm. Obviously, that doesn't work. And so, because people were just, hey, well, why spend a resource? Why spend time? Today, I think what's very interesting is a couple of things. The public is finally realizing the importance of real estate in the discussion about climate change. And it's very recent. I think even recently I was giving a speech at a climate change conference, and I ran a survey. Everyone, 85% voted that the most polluting industry was road transportation or aviation. These are 2-3% max. And so there are things to consider. Data in Europe, there's GDPR. Everyone, they hear data, they start running away. They'll talk to the lawyer of, it's fine. These are frameworks, and you need to learn to build your business around them. It just means education, it means time, it needs resources, and eventually we'll get there. There's no choice. What is the choice? There's a greater risk today to not do something than take the risk of doing something. And that's what the mindset has changed, I think, and it needs to change further. Those companies, real estate companies, have never spent more than maybe 0.5% of their revenues in what they call IT. Well, today you need to spend more, and it's common, and you need to evolve as a firm, not only at your asset level and all the sorts of solutions we talked about, but at the management level. How do you make better decisions? How to make more informed decisions? How to leverage this data that you have to actually create insights that can be used across the firm in the different departments, so that you can have a collaborative approach around some of those things. And it's happening, and yes, there are risks, and you need to put the right systems in place, spend the money on security, and have the right people. But it's part of growing up, it's part of evolving. And as I said, there is no other way. So I think that's the good news,
If I may, I would like to share an example of, I cannot agree more actually. We work mostly with real estate investors, asset managers, such as Société Foncière Lyonnaise, Utopicus, Unibail, Clépierre, but also with occupants, actually. And we have 200 customers that are occupants. And what we see lately, they used to sell their walls to asset managers, to investors. And they wanted only to rent because, thanks to that, there's no consolidation in the balance sheet, and it's only a cost you need to manage, and you do all your activity within the buildings. Now it's completely reversing. We have more and more customers that are occupants that purchase back their asset from real estate investors in order to make sure that they can keep the value and manage internally the value. Not only to make the decisions more quickly, more rapidly, to change and to fight the climate change and so on, but also because they understood that there is value behind taking care about the real estate asset and not only using it. So it's quite interesting.
So maybe there is any question in the room?
I can easily imagine how tech can reduce cost. And I have an example of tech bringing new revenue.
Sure. So I think the point I was trying to make is, as a landlord, there's no reason why you should have only one source of revenue limited to the rent. You own that relationship with the tenants, with the occupiers, with the people that are passing through your buildings. If you own an office building, it's not only the employees of the tenant, but it's people coming for meetings, service providers coming. And so how do you take ownership of that whole array of activity that are happening within the building or surrounding the building? For example, by creating, tenant engagement apps where a lot of those things are done through the app, where you can leverage this database of people that you own, where you can collect a lot of data and you can start basically plugging them with service providers, etc. That's the easy answer. If you think about residential, for example, today people rent and they pay a rent, but eventually as a landlord, you should be able to offer an envelope where they pay one number to you, which has utilities, which has phone, and potentially we have a company, for example, where now when you're a tenant, you can decide, I want to pay 50 euros more per month, and I'm going to change the sofa in my apartment. I'm going to upgrade the sofa, but it's just another, increment in the rent. And then you plug this, you're going to be the first one to know as a landlord, and you can suddenly plug third-party service providers, product providers to kind of take a cut of those revenues. That's one way to create that additional layer of revenues, which can amount to a lot, especially if they're capitalized at the same rates that the asset is capitalized at, 2, 3, 4%.
Maybe I have a more, let's say, a different way to answer your question. Look, the way I see this is that all of this story about climate change and ESG, it's at the heart of the real estate industry. So all of the landlords have been working in this for many years, and we know that we have to do it. Honestly speaking, 3 or 4 years ago, the tenants were not there. So we were doing a lot in our buildings, and they did not particularly were impressed by this. But now we are in a situation that we, the CEOs of a real estate company, we say we have to be green, whatever it takes. No, let's use this word. No, and but also our tenants are starting to say, I have to be green, whatever it takes. No, and if I have a building that is providing a lower carbon footprint for whatever reason to my tenant, the question for me is how much additional euros can I charge to him, and how much he will be willing to pay, just because the carbon footprint that he is going to have, is going to be lower. So that's where the extra income should come. Honestly, we still don't know how much, and when, but that's the direction.
By the way, just to add one thing to that, we talked about value creation before. If you combine the fact that your cost of financing will be lower if you have the right systems in place, that you can charge more rent, and that potentially when you sell the building, you don't have more capex, etc., for the next buyer. This becomes exponential, the multiplying effect of it. So we're just finding out now actually what those values will be. They certainly will start increasing over time, but there's a multiplying effect that I think will have a big impact.
Yeah. Having said, Juan, you allow me, because the other thing I have to say is, at the same time, we, the one who invest in having more efficient buildings, are now facing tougher and tougher questions. Next week, I have a meeting with my ESG committee, and the question on the table is, do we invest 40, 80, or 120 million to have greener buildings? No? And as I was saying, the only thing that is real in all the things that we will discuss is the money that we're going to spend. This will be real cash, not monopoly kind of cash. So I say, this is real. I may invest 40, 80, or 120, and these are in fact real numbers. At the other side, I have green, extra green, or super green buildings. So my question is, should I choose A, B, or C? I know that there is a higher value, but I also know there is a higher capex. So this trade-off, it's one of the things that will be at the heart of managing companies in the short term.
We will read some days from now, it's 40, 80, or 120. No, just to finish, another point here, I think that other thing that I'm seeing a lot, and that you are saying one way or other, it's leakage. No? When you say thinking more in RESI, what we are seeing is the gross to net. No, it's dramatic. No, the money that you have in between. So technology must help to reduce this leakage one way or other, because that's dramatic. No, and just to recap and to finish. Because I think that's, well, the answer to the question for me is very clear. For whatever reason, probably my answer is that this sector has been really traditional for whatever reasons, is behind the others. No? The others, but that there is no reason other than that the sector and the industry has not been early movers, as other industries has happened years ago, probably because it made more sense than in this industry. But I think that the opportunity is super huge, and I think that the concept is already here, and that we will see companies like AO PropTech raising money because it's a very clear topic. No? So thank you so much for your time, and I hope that it has been useful for everyone.